This is an audio sample of Freedom Behind Bars by Theo Roll, from the Courageous Overcomers Anthology. Stacked in neat rows of 3 like sardines in a heat-sealed can, dripping with stale sweat, and closer than most people want to be with anyone, inmates of Her Majesty's Fox Hill prison lay lengthwise on the cold, bare cement floor of our unlit cell. To our heads sat one on the bucket that served as the toilet for 5 grown men in a cell that had yet to be cleaned in all my years as a resident of the facility. The bucket he sat on would be emptied in the morning. His head and back pressed to the wall in one position, hoping for some shut-eye before morning and relief from the obnoxious odor that seeped through not just our bucket, but all the buckets on our windowless maximum security block. Across our feet in front of the steel doors lay another inmate. Even as a man of average height, he was too tall to stretch out completely in the tiny cell that should house 1, or maybe 2 people at best. He was our buffer, the one who served as the first trampoline for the hungry resident rodents and roaches that climbed our makeshift cardboard barricade at the base of the iron gate for the little food we stashed in plastic bags tied to the bars. We were L7, one of the 12 cells on the block who endured a harsh life in prison. My early life. Nobody plans to fall flat on their face, and I don't know of anyone who planned to spend time in prison. I didn't, but that's where I ended up early in life. Not once or twice, not even 3 times. No, I found myself in the literal hellhole 8, maybe 9 times, because of my poor decisions. Stay with me as I share my journey, and how I experienced freedom behind bars. As a young boy growing up in a fatherless home with my mother and 4 siblings, I realized early that I didn't just want a daddy, I needed one. Boys in particular love camaraderie. They are born to lead, but need to be taught how to. In the absence of having a father or a positive male role model in our lives, we seek the next best thing, a counterfeit of the original. Some boys in my day, and now even girls, look to have this need met by becoming a part of a gang. By virtue of living in a particular neighborhood, you were considered a gang of that specific area. I never saw myself as a gang member. I didn't see any benefit to it, and I wanted to live life on my terms, even as a kid. Life wasn't easy growing up, but Mummy did the best she could with me and my brother and our 3 sisters. I don't know if she realized it, but she was way out of her depth. She tried to be a mother and father, but that was impossible. Mummy worked hard and was able to feed our bodies as best she could with the limited finances she had, but she couldn't feed the longing in my soul for my father. Raised by a single mother. My mother probably got irritated with me asking the same questions day in and day out. Who is my daddy? Where is my daddy? Why isn't my daddy around? Of all my siblings' fathers, only one of them ever contributed to their child's well-being. Nevertheless, despite the heartbreak, I don't believe I was a troublesome child. I was confused and felt abandoned by the one person I believe a boy needed, his father. Without a father to help form my identity and guide me, I didn't know who I was or where I was going in life. Without knowing where I was going in life, I took the road of least resistance, a road my mother never approved of, the road that kept me in a cycle that took me nowhere. Mummy laid down the law in our home. Sadly, it was not enough to keep me reined in. By the age of 11, I believed I was my own man. I was already spending much of my time on the streets. Mummy didn't like it, but I was prepared to suffer the consequences of my actions, even if it meant a good cut behind. In my eyes, she was a woman, and no matter how hard she beat me, I would get over the pain quickly and do what I wanted to. I didn't believe a woman could relate to a male child as effectively as a man, no matter how well-intended she was. Whenever she tried to discipline me, I retaliated by staying out later, knowing she would be worried. In my mind, if I was going to suffer, she would have to feel that too. So I continued to spend time on the streets, connecting with the wrong fellas and eventually peddling drugs to help pay the bills around the home. Even with spending most of my free time on the street, I was a good student. I remember being excited about going to school. I wanted an education and I loved to learn. That was until the bullies decided I would be the object of their torment. They were groups of boys who were a part of a gang that was at war with the gang in my neighborhood. They didn't understand, nor did they care that I was not a part of the gangs in my neighborhood. By virtue of my address, I was not one of their crew. That made me bait, and they were the fish. If it were 1 or 2 boys, I would have been inclined to fight back, but I was outnumbered. I decided to keep calm and not make the situation any worse. Day after day I ran home, trying to avoid the boys who were hell-bent on making my life miserable. At first, they surrounded me, taunting me with brutal words. They stole my lunch money, and on one occasion after buying lunch, one of them emptied it onto the ground. I was their target for rock throwing when trying to go to a class. At 14, I made up my mind that I would run no more. Instead, I would put an end to my torment. That day I packed a short cutlass in my school bag. I knew my tormentors could not resist having another go at me, and when they came, I was ready. After wielding the cutlass unmercifully, the well-slashed boys were carted off to the hospital, and me to jail. Thankfully I got off that time, but it came with a heavy price. I was expelled from school with no hope of acceptance to any other school. With very little education, I joined the workforce pumping gas at a local service station. While working at the station, I heard about a program called Yeast. I was intrigued and wanted to be a part of it, so I spoke with several people who helped to get me into the program. Although much of the focus was on math and English, being mentored by a man intrigued me. When I was 19, my mother died. It was a blow knowing that the one person who believed that I could do better was now gone. A life of crime. As I grew, I didn't have the education or skills to equip me for an honest, well-paying job. The only thing I knew and was good at that could pay my bills was selling drugs. It didn't take long for me to become one of the better salesmen in a local drug ring. I worked hard, was paid well, and kept my mouth shut, sometimes being the fall guy for the bigger bosses without having to be asked. This lifestyle is what initially landed me behind bars at 16. Too many people on the outside believe breaking the law is cool and crime pays well. Thanks to Hollywood, those same people are duped into thinking a life of crime is glamorous, and that spending time in prison with their boys is not a bad deal. You would think that one night in a hot, crowded cell with food not fit for humans would be a deterrence to any misguided soul, but that is not the case. Instead, young men like me pour into the prison system like sheep being led to the slaughter daily. Some are falsely accused, others guilty of their crime. This has been an audio sample from Courageous Overcomers Anthology. For more information on how you can secure your copy of this book, contact Mr. Theo Roll or visit booksbybethel.com/courageous-overcomers.